Now, I don't have a lot of media come on this show because a lot of times we talk about the media and our frustrations with them. But I have with me a gentleman today that I want you to meet because I have been following him. I admire him, and he is one of the most honest reporters out there. He's hard hitting. He's been at it a long time, and he's from a city near and dear to me, my native Chicago. William Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, so let's get right at it. First of all, tell people about your journalism career.
Oof. Well, I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I love Chicago with all of my heart. Just to be clear, even though the stories coming out of Chicago are bad, I love Chicago. It breaks my heart to see where the city of Chicago, that I was raised to believe was the greatest city in the history of the world, Betsy. And I've in all of my career in TV, radio, print, Emmy Award winning, I have to say, because nobody else will, so I'll say it. All I ever did was say how much I loved Chicago and how great Chicago was. And I would literally fight people who disagreed with me when it came to that issue. But sadly, the stories that I've been reporting out of Chicago, specifically, since Mayor Lori Lightfoot and her lockdowns and looting and all of the other, obvious violent crime, violent attacks against the police. Okay, and her attacks, her actual verbal attacks against the police, that somehow the police officers of the city of Chicago were somehow as guilty as the violent criminals when it came to crime on the streets of Chicago, that somehow they bore some responsibility for the violent crime. It really hurt, and I had to report Mayor Lightfoot. Honestly, I had to go to her press conferences. It's almost comical at this point. If if it was like a Netflix series, I guess I would find it humorous to watch. But as somebody who had to live it, it was horrible. Every week I would go to her City Hall press conference. I would ask her the most basic questions you could possibly imagine. Why, we had, I would say, Mayor Lightfoot, we had 50 shootings this week, or, or 80 shootings in a weekend, on some weekends. What is your plan to reduce the shootings? And she inevitably would lose her temper with me. She would call me names, tell me I was stupid. And this is all from the podium. The official City Hall mayor's press conference, press room podium with the seal of the city of Chicago, which I always thought was the most beautiful thing in the world. The great seal of the city of Chicago. And there she was, telling me that shootings were down. Well, at the time, I didn't even realize it. But these videos, these confrontations between Mayor Lightfoot and myself were going viral. Every week, these videos we're getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of positive comments, likes, and shares that I was unaware of, because these various platforms would share my video or share my exchange with the mayor, but none of them said reporter William J. Kelly. All of them said reporter exchange with Mayor Lightfoot, or anonymous man in Chicago asks question, or something like this. So I had no idea that these exchanges with the mayor were even going viral. And then so I was as shocked as anybody when I finally Googled William J. Kelly, or Chicago reporter or Lightfoot reporter, and there was just I could scroll page after page after page after page of viral videos that other, I should say, other reporters or platforms were they were racking up a lot of views, and probably making a lot of money now that I think about it, off of these viral videos.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. I'm one of those people who was retweeting your videos
Oh, thank you.
and and watching what was happening. And just so people know, because I talk about Chicago a lot in the media, and it's almost always about crime or what's happening with the police or the lockdowns or the vax mandates, things like that. But I am like you, where I love the city of Chicago, and
Yes.
I have lived there or in the suburbs since I was 21 years old. And it is one of the most beautiful, cleanest cities in the world. And I'll fight anyone who wants to say that we don't have the best food in the world, because we have the
Yeah.
best food in the world in the city of Chicago. But the problem is Chicago and the Chicago Police Department have these reputations now of being violent, and there's always talk of corruption and things like that. And you're not a super political guy. You're just a guy that seemed to me to be interested in the facts. Am I correct about that?
Well, that's was the way I approached Mayor Lightfoot. I just, in fact, a lot of people would call me up and and say, "Hey, I really love the way you are attacking Lightfoot." And I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not attacking anybody. I'm asking, the questions that reporters are supposed to ask: who, what, where, when, how, and why. That none of that is an attack, but it was really weird, Betsy. I have to tell you, Lightfoot viewed it as an attack, because sadly I was the only reporter in the City Hall press corps that was actually asking her real questions. And she had just become so used to having reporters repeat her press release back to her. So as a result, I was very honored that a lot of people in the city, especially people who worked for the city and police officers in particular, would contact me and say, "Hey, Kelly, here's a good question for Lightfoot. Here's something that I would like you to ask her." We had a spike in police suicides, for example, during her administration, and people would ask me to ask her about her policies towards the police, her rhetoric towards the police, and I would do that, and I was honored to bring those questions to the mayor.
So let me ask you, because you've spent so much time at those press conferences with Lori Lightfoot, and you watched her administration. But why do you think Mayor Lightfoot and her administration were so antagonistic toward the Chicago Police Department?
Well, it was very surreal to see it, because I grew up in a cop neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, the 19th Ward. I grew up, it's a 100% Democrat ward of the city, probably the most Democrat ward maybe in the country. But, faith in God, patriotism, and being pro law enforcement were three things that nobody would ever have disagreed with you on when I was growing up. Now, those are three issues that will get you like kicked out of the City Hall press corps.
Right,
It's like the
canceled,
most bizarre
right?
thing.
Canceled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and believe it or not, is Mayor Lori Lightfoot actually did cancel my City of Chicago press credential because we were getting closer to her reelection. She saw that my questions were going viral on a regular basis. People like Tucker Carlson were inviting me on to talk about crime in Chicago, and it was hurting her reelection. So, they yanked my media press credential. Believe it or not, I still have a federal freedom of speech lawsuit in federal court to try and get my media credential back so I can go back and do my job, despite the fact that Lightfoot is gone and we have a new mayor, Johnson. But, and if people want to read this, the truth has nothing to hide, Betsy. So, they can read the entire lawsuit at reporterwilliamjkelly.com. It's all right there. And of course, if anyone who wants to support my lawsuit, it is, it's a First Amendment lawsuit, classic First Amendment. And the other thing is, as I'm sure you know, it will set legal precedent. So if I lose, then we all lose, then that precedent will be set that if any petty, corrupt, or incompetent little tyrannical mayor of any city, town, village decides that they don't like a question, they can just tell the one reporter in town who's actually asking real questions, you are no longer allowed at City Hall.
And that is, and that goes against everything that we talk about in the United States Constitution, and
you would think.
And I'll tell you, and I talk about this all the time. As a police officer, the first thing we do as a police officer is raise our right hand, pledge an oath to the Constitution of the United States, and then, of course, to whatever state we're working on. And I got to tell you, I was recently in Tbilisi, Georgia, just south of Russia, and I was talking to some Russian police officers, and I was talking about how we can do a better job dealing with the media as police officers. And after my class, I had these Russian police officers who came up to me and asked me if the reporters that I had talked about, I'd shown some videos saying untrue things about law enforcement. They asked me, are those reporters still in prison? And I kind of laughed. And then I remembered, who I was talking to. I literally pulled out, I always carry a copy of the Constitution in my back pocket. And I said, not only are they not in prison, but as a police officer, I will defend to the death their right to go before the public and lie about me, because that's how strongly we police officers feel about the United States Constitution. And as a reporter, I know you share that passion, right?
Well, I was raised to believe that freedom of speech was like an article of faith, that you couldn't, and I remember going to all of my Catholic school classes and hearing all of my liberal professors telling me that all of these people, these, dirty hippie freak people who hate America, that somehow, they have the right to say whatever they want, and I have to accept it. And I'm not going to lie, as an Irish Catholic, from the South Side of Chicago, it was a little tough pill for me to swallow, that somehow I was supposed to just accept, artists urinating on crucifixes or something like this, and I'm supposed to accept this, right? Well, sure enough, the first time in my life that I actually go and ask, the mayor of the city of Chicago a question, I have my First Amendment rights ripped right out from underneath me. So, Betsy, it appears, I agree with you that the Constitution, we should all, defend the Constitution, especially if we swear an oath to it, which I would imagine Mayor Lightfoot swore the same oath that you did, so it's like, I'm all for that, but I really do think it needs to be applied evenly across the board. Whether you're, a hippie urinating on a crucifix or burning an American flag, or whether you're, a reporter in the city of Chicago trying to ask a politician, what they're going to, if it's safe to go to Holy Name Cathedral because there was a mass shooting across the street, it's it is, I'll be honest with you, I believe that PTSD is real because, every once in a while I think, oh my God, I think I might actually have it, as a result of 2020, 2021, 2022, people always used to tell me, even years ago, they would say, oh, Chicago's going to go the way of Detroit, because Chicago always had this reputation for, corruption, political corruption, violent crime in the streets. But I would always say, no, you're wrong. Chicago will never go the way of Detroit, because Chicagoans at their core will, they will always, unite and fight the Chicago spirit, right? To stand up and tell the truth. Well, Lori Lightfoot, the way she implemented these lockdowns, and boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, Betsy, it really is shocking the way she just flipped a switch. The day that our governor, J.B. Pritzker, said, I'm locking down the state, Mayor Lightfoot can, handle a lot of these lockdowns the way she wants to handle them. The day that switch was flipped, she embraced it and relished it in a way that was ghoulish. And I just remember thinking to myself, even if there's some necessity for this lockdown, the way they implemented it was positively ghoulish. They made all of the productive people, the schools, the churches, the businesses, they came down on them. Those people, the productive people, the good people, the law-abiding people, they came down on them with like a ton of bricks. And then they turned around and let the inmates of the jail out for their protection because it was dangerous for them to be in jail. So they let the inmates out, and literally like clockwork, that's when the looting started, and there was no support from City Hall for the police who were out in the middle of Michigan Avenue being attacked by these looters.
Literally being attacked, and in front of the
Literally being
fountain,
attacked.
and in front of the bean, and
Yep.
that's the thing, and that's what I want people to know about is how did it get so violent so quickly? You were on the ground there. What did you see? Because it seemed like the Chicago Police Department was just, outgunned, outstaffed, and just sometimes absolutely bewildered. Talk
Well,
about
I
what
don't
you
think
saw.
I honestly think I don't think that the Chicago Police Department had should have been put in the middle of that at all. That was, what I saw was a military style operation. When I remember not just, living, I mean, I grew up on the South Side, but I've been living and working in downtown Chicago, most of my adult life now, right? And when this attack on downtown Chicago, the Magnificent Mile, all of those stores, the Gucci store and the whatever Rolex store, etc. When that attack took place, it was military style precision. It wasn't just random people all of a sudden showing up and breaking a window and grabbing a bag or whatever. No, 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 no. It was like the kind of military operation that you would expect took place in like Baghdad or something like this, where there were convoys of trucks, and a lot of these trucks were obviously stolen, like U-Haul trucks, things like this they came down Michigan Avenue, they went off, literally drove into storefront windows. Crews jumped out, grabbed merchandise, got back in their vehicles or secondary vehicles that were waiting. The Chicago police, I'm 100% pro law enforcement, Betsy. Don't get me wrong. That's not there. How is that? That was the Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot. If they cared about the people of Chicago, they would have called the Illinois National Guard and probably requested even more reinforcements from then President Trump, right? That required a military response, not Chicago police officers. I'm sorry. Most of the police, like you said, the Chicago police officers, they were outnumbered. They couldn't protect themselves. And I hate to say that because I know that, that is the kind of thing that almost sounds like I'm somehow like it's some kind of a put down, but it's not. That I am making an honest to God statement right now, Betsy. They were outnumbered and there was nothing that they could have done to protect themselves. They were fighting for their own lives at that point.
And it was extraordinary. And then as time went forward, we had the vaccine mandates. so that, a lot of Chicago police officers, weren't allowed to come back to work.
Right.
And then we heard the mayor and her administration blaming everyone from the police department to crime victims to business owners, and not really blaming the criminals. Unfortunately, we have less than a minute left. Tell everybody where they can find you, your website, your Twitter handle, all of it.
Well, I know everybody needs help, and I'm so I almost feel embarrassed to ask, but we do have this federal lawsuit. There is a PayPal there at reporterwilliamjkelly.com. It is good news, a 501c3, so it is a tax write-off. So, if you don't want to pay, if you want to give, if you want to support the First Amendment more than the IRS, you can go to reporterwilliamjkelly.com. You can also follow our reporting at William J. Kelly on Twitter, obviously. And we are we're trying to cover the new mayor who literally campaigned on a defund the police campaign. He's every violent mob, flash mob, smash and grab that has occurred in the city of Chicago since he's become mayor, he has blamed on disinvestment. So he's not holding the violent criminals accountable for anything. He's saying that it's all due to systematic racism, and so the city of Chicago is in a lot of trouble. I choose to stay here. My hope is to obviously get my official media credential back, go to City Hall and ask the real questions.
Well, I tell you, we can't thank you enough for what you do. We'll be following you. And if you would like more information about us, visit the National Police Association at nationalpolice.org.
Sam, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.